Middle of the night, the sky above a Russian military base lit up with explosions. This wasn't just any base, it was Soltsy-2, a high-security airfield where Russia stores and operates long-range bombers, including planes that can carry nuclear weapons. The attack was fast, unexpected, and powerful. People living in nearby towns reported loud blasts and huge clouds of smoke. Hours later, videos began to appear online showing fire, destroyed hangars, and damaged aircraft. What happened here wasn't just a small incident. It could change the course of the war. Let's break this down simply. A drone strike managed to hit one of Russia's most important and sensitive airfields. According to Russian officials, only one bomber was slightly damaged, but satellite images and reports from military analysts say otherwise. In fact, the damage may be far worse than what the Russian government is admitting. So how did a drone make it this far into Russian territory? Who carried out the attack? And why is this particular base so important? To understand the full story, we need to look at what Soltsy-2 is. Located in the Novgorod region of western Russia, Soltsy-2 is not near the front lines of the Ukraine war. It's 600 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border, deep inside Russian territory. This is where the Russian Air Force keeps its two 22 M3 bombers, capable of carrying long-range cruise missiles and nuclear warheads. These bombers are used to strike targets in Ukraine, especially power plants and critical infrastructure. So, if even one of them was destroyed, that's a major loss to Russia's military. The fact that Ukraine or someone else was able to reach so deep inside Russian borders raises a lot of questions. Russia has one of the most advanced air defense systems in the world. So how did a drone fly over hundreds of kilometers and hit a nuclear bomber base? There are two main theories. First, that Ukraine has developed long-range drones capable of traveling these distances. Second, that the drones were launched from inside Russia, possibly with the help of Russian opposition groups or saboteurs. Either way, it shows a massive gap in Russia's internal defense. Now let's talk about what we actually saw from the damage. One video showed black smoke rising from the airfield, with fire visible near parked aircraft. Later, satellite images confirmed that one bomber was badly damaged or possibly destroyed. That's not something Russia can easily hide. 22 bombers are not cheap or replaceable overnight. Losing even one of them is a serious setback, not just for its war effort, but for its overall air strike capabilities. And this wasn't just a single explosion. Reports suggest that fuel tanks and ammunition depots were also hit. That's why people saw multiple blasts and thick smoke lasting for hours. Analysts believe the attack may have been carefully planned to hit those specific targets, making the strike not only symbolic, but also tactical. Of course, Russia's official response has been to downplay everything. The Ministry of Defense said the drone was shot down and that damage was minimal. But this is a typical pattern. During this entire war, Russia has repeatedly tried to control the narrative, especially when attacks happen inside its own territory. However, independent sources and open-source intelligence tell a very different story. As for who carried out the strike, Ukraine hasn't officially claimed responsibility. But sources inside the Ukrainian military have told Western media that GUR, Ukraine's military intelligence agency, was behind it. That wouldn't be shocking. Over the past few months, Ukraine has hit oil refineries, weapons factories, and even Kremlin-linked targets inside Russia. They've shown they can reach farther and deeper than anyone expected, using drones, sabotage units, and sometimes even cyber attacks. What does this mean for Russia? In short, it shows that even high-security military bases are not safe. If bombers that can carry nuclear weapons are exposed, then so are other sensitive locations. Russia now faces a new kind of threat, not just from missiles on the front lines, but from long-range drones or internal strikes from within its borders. This strike could also change how other countries look at the war. NATO is watching closely. While the alliance hasn't responded directly, some NATO officials told media that this shows how bold and capable Ukraine is becoming. The US, on the other hand, has said it does not support attacks inside Russian territory using American weapons. but it also said Ukraine has the right to defend itself in whatever way it can. One important thing to understand: this airfield is connected to Russia's nuclear capability. Even if no nuclear weapons were hit, attacking a base that houses nuclear-capable bombers is a huge signal. It raises serious concerns around the world because when you hit a nuclear site, even indirectly, the risk of escalation becomes much higher. If Russia views this as a red line, it could respond more aggressively. But so far, the Kremlin has held back. Why? Possibly because acknowledging the strike too loudly would cause panic inside Russia. It would also show weakness, something Putin cannot afford right now. Instead, Russia has continued launching missile strikes against Ukraine, especially in Kyiv and Odessa, trying to maintain pressure. But they haven't made any major strategic moves in response to Soltsy 2. At least, not yet. Another reason for this could be that Russia is overstretched. With manpower, losses mounting, and Western sanctions biting into its economy, Moscow may not be in a position to escalate. But that doesn't mean the danger is gone. In fact, this kind of strike, bold, deep, and strategic, could trigger new military policies on both sides. There's also a new fear. What if the next strike hits an active nuclear weapons storage site? What if Ukrainian drones or internal saboteurs go after a missile silo, a submarine base, or a command center? These questions are now very real, not just for Russia and Ukraine, but for every country watching this war. The attack on Soltsy 2 was more than just a single successful mission. It marked a shift in how modern war is being fought. In this part, we'll focus on what comes next, how Russia might respond, how Ukraine is reshaping military strategy, and what the rest of the world should take from this turning point. Let's begin with Russia's possible reaction. When a country's nuclear-capable bombers are hit, even if they weren't carrying nuclear weapons at the time, it's a big deal. It challenges their sense of security. Russia has two main paths it can follow. Now, it can respond quietly by improving internal security, or it can go the aggressive route and retaliate militarily. So far, Russia has chosen to downplay the incident. They've claimed there was little damage and are acting as if nothing major happened. But behind the scenes, this strike has likely triggered alarms at the highest levels of Russian defense. Reports suggest that military bases across Russia have increased their alert levels and started moving sensitive equipment to more secure locations. This is important because it shows that even though Russia is not openly talking about it, they are taking the threat seriously. And that means Ukraine has now changed the rules of the game. Before, Russia thought its deep territory was safe. Now, that confidence is shaken. And this leads us to the second key point: Ukraine's evolving strategy. From the start of the war, Ukraine has been the smaller, less equipped side. But instead of trying to match Russia tank for tank, missile for missile, they've used a smarter approach. They're combining technology, intelligence, and precision to hit targets that truly matter. The Soltsy 2 strike is a perfect example of this. Rather than wasting resources on areas with little impact, Ukraine is choosing to go after airfields, radar stations, oil depots, bridges, and military factories. The things that fuel Russia's ability to continue this war. And what makes this even more impressive is that they're doing it with homemade drones, small sabotage units, and information from open sources. This kind of warfare is called asymmetric warfare, when a weaker side uses unconventional methods to fight a stronger one. In today's world, this means drones, cyber attacks, and targeted operations can often be more effective than large-scale invasions. Ukraine is proving that a smart, adaptive military can challenge even a superpower like Russia. But Ukraine's strategy doesn't just rely on weapons. Information and perception are now powerful tools of war. When Ukraine carries out a successful strike, and it spreads through social media or satellite images, it creates pressure on Russia from within. Russian citizens start questioning how secure they really are. This weakens support for the war and causes internal doubts. Now, let's look at how the international community is reacting. Countries in NATO, especially those in Europe, are paying very close attention. They know that if Russia feels cornered, it could try to escalate, not just in Ukraine, but possibly in other regions. That's why NATO is increasing surveillance flights, holding more drills, and supporting Ukraine with intelligence rather than just weapons. The US has maintained a careful position. American officials have said they don't support strikes inside Russian territory using US-supplied weapons. But they've also made it clear that Ukraine has the right to use its own methods to defend itself. This leaves room for operations like Soltsy II to happen without directly involving NATO. But this also opens the door to risk. The closer Ukraine gets to striking nuclear-related infrastructure, the more dangerous things become. Russia may not respond with nuclear weapons, but even a large-scale military retaliation could lead to a wider war. That's why experts are now debating a key question. Where is the line? How far can Ukraine go before it crosses into extremely dangerous territory? It's also worth noting that drones are now becoming the future of warfare. What used to require jets and missiles can now be done with a flying machine the size of a backpack. And they're cheap, hard to detect, and easily replaceable. Countries around the world are watching Ukraine's tactics closely, learning how they can use similar tools in their own defense systems. This also means that traditional military defense, like radar stations and missile shields, may need to change. You can't shoot down what you can't see, and most of these small drones fly low and slow, slipping past even advanced defense systems. That's why modern militaries are now investing more in anti-drone technology, AI detection systems, and even directed energy weapons. Coming back to the strike, one thing is clear. Ukraine is trying to send a message, not just to Russia, but to the world. That message is simple. We can reach you anywhere. If you continue to attack us, we will respond, not randomly, but with precision. This mindset is very different from past wars. In older conflicts, battles were fought over land and territory. Today, battles are being fought over infrastructure, logistics, morale, and global attention. And in all of these areas, Ukraine is proving to be far more capable than anyone expected when this war began. So what should we expect next? There will likely be more attacks like Soltsy II, not just on airfields, but on critical supply lines, factories, and energy infrastructure. Ukraine will continue using its brainpower and innovation to strike where it hurts the most. And each time this happens, Russia will be forced to spend more time, money, and resources just to stay safe within its own borders. At the same time, the world will keep watching for signs of escalation. Most leaders don't want this conflict to spill beyond Ukraine. But as long as key targets inside Russia remain in play, the chance of broader conflict will always be in the background. One final thought. War is changing. It's no longer just about soldiers and tanks. It's about data, drones, networks, and smart decisions. Ukraine's strike on Soltsy II is just one example of this. The battlefield is evolving, and those who fail to adapt may find themselves vulnerable in ways they never imagined. If you found this breakdown valuable, consider following for more updates that explain what's really happening, simply, clearly, and without noise. This war is rewriting the rules of modern conflict, and staying informed means staying prepared. Make sure you don't miss what comes next.